Hello all and welcome to the first edition of my competition gear series, and today we'll be looking at what keeps you moving. Shoes! In this series I'll be filling you in on the things to consider before spending your hard-earned money. In action shooting sports, time and accuracy are the two metrics used to determine who wins. You're expected to make a certain accuracy bar, but beyond that it's all about saving time. As you shoot a stage, it isn't just the stuff you do with your gun that takes up time. You also need to move through the stage to engage all of the targets, and on many stages it's efficient movement that wins. Everyone can use improvement in their marksmanship, but improving your movement on a stage can be done easily and cheaply with the right pair of shoes. And hey, if you save yourself from even a single fall, save one more injury, that's money well spent. So you can't just go on Amazon and type shooting shoes. Well, you can, and the results aren't bad, but you'll notice there aren't literally shoes made for shooting. The results provided are trail shoes. We need to look at what do we expect from our shoes in a shooting sport, and are there other sports that share the same requirements for their shoes? In general, there are three areas that define the conditions of action shooting: type of movement, environment, and surfaces. Type of movement: USPSA doesn't require us to do movement in long distances, but rather short bursts, start-stop in every direction. The type of movement looks a lot more like tennis and basketball than golf or running. Environment: you'll be doing this outdoor or indoor. Outdoor obviously is very specific to where you live, or more accurately, where you're going to shoot. Is it hot, rainy, snowy, lots of standing water, those kinds of things. Indoor is obviously very consistent. Surfaces: the surfaces you encounter are varied. Wood is used for fault lines, activators, and platforms, and that is probably consistent for everyone around the world. When trying to come up to a running stop on a wet wooden activator, that can be a very serious slipping hazard with the wrong pair of shoes. This will rule out any kind of real spiked shoe. Gravel is very common. Sand is a little less common, but I do have a range near me that does use very deep sand. Dirt and grass are a little less common, as once you have a few shooters in the area, it turns to hard-packed ground. And hard-packed ground is actually very common for ranges that have grass or gravel, as soon as a few shooters go through the area, it reveals and pats down that dirt, turns into hard-packed ground pretty quickly. Indoor, it's obviously something like cement. I suggest you take note of what your environment looks like. For me, it's anything from snow, rain, and hot sunny days, all on gravel and packed ground with odd wood platforms and fault lines. So what sports have similar needs to my criteria? I'll go through a few sports and just look at how they compare and give them a score. Tennis, it gets 1 point because it's very bursty, multi-directional movement, although typically it's played on consistent surfaces unlike the ones we shoot from, so it's probably good for everything other than indoor cement. So I'm going to give it 1 point for indoor cement if it's an indoor category, and 1 point for the multi-directional movement. Basketball, similar to tennis, often involves a lot of bursty lateral movement, 1 point extra for the indoor use. NFL, 1 point for bursty movement, 1 point for adverse weatherproofing, so for example these are waterproof. Good for grass in general, if you've got the spikes, but as I said, with the use of wood, spikes are probably not in play. These are actually hybrids, so they're not true spikes, they're sort of rubber spikes. And these are a lot more versatile and can be used on all of the surfaces that we use in action shooting. So for coverage on all of those surfaces, I'm going to say it's a 2, although I'm going to deduct 1 point off for the fact that these do not perform that well on wood. I have to get onto, say, wood activator a little gingerly. So in total, 3 points for the NFL boot. Running or cross trainers are not typically used for bursty movement. There's a lot of focus on sort of rolling efficiency. Good on indoor and wood. I'm going to give it 1 point for an indoor category. Golf, huge points for environmental conditions. You can get these waterproof very trivially, or in more open designs for hotter weather. Unbelievable amounts of traction. However, it's not designed for any kind of movement at all. It's sort of a lot of traction in one place statically. It's not designed to move the human around other than a sort of a fast, twisty, jerky motion. So trail running, these aren't designed for bursty movement, but there's a lot of need to have traction in multiple directions, as you may think. Like if you're walking down a pass and the slope is this way, you're going to have traction in multiple directions. So although not designed for bursty movement per se, it does have a lot of traction to help aid in that. So I'm going to give it a half point there. These get another point for weather conditions. These come in variants that are Gore-Tex or some weatherproofing and no weatherproofing, so that gives you a lot of options. And in terms of traction on the different surfaces we encounter in USPSA, gravel, sand, hard packed ground, wood, this is good on all of those. So 2 points there. And 3.5 points overall. So all being said, the trail running probably does end up on top for most people in most conditions, and it is the case for myself. Although there are conditions in which I do want to use the NFL boot for things like snow, or mostly weather dependent, where this is waterproof and this one I purchased more for a summer shoe. And for indoor, you're going to want something like a runner, tennis shoe, basketball shoe, those last two probably being preferable. So my shoes, specifically I got the Salomon Speedcross 4 hiking trail running shoe. Very simple pattern, almost like hybrid spikes. It seems pretty common. As you can see, the trail shoe has a very common pattern here as well. Breathes, flexible. I love the laceless design. It has never come loose on me. Looking at actual hiking reviews, apparently these are not great on wet rocks and things like that, but for everything in USPSA I found it to be exceptional. You'll probably find this particular shoe on greater than 50% of all USPSA shooters' feet. Very, very common shoe. These can be had in stores for about $120, a little bit more for the Gore-Tex version of course. The other respected brand out there is Innovate, INOV8. A lot of excellent shooters use that shoe. It's an entire company. It's dedicated to trail running, so they're very well respected, and their product lineup is a little hard to decipher actually. But in reality, USPSA isn't a very difficult sport in terms of movement. It does have requirements. Almost any trail running shoe will do. I'd seek ones that have these simpler designs that offer more points of penetration into the ground. This one is a $20 shoe from Costco, and it served me quite well to the point where I've worn it out completely. These are my NFL hybrids. I believe they're Under Armour. I don't remember the exact name of it. It's Highlights. These are a hybrid spike, so they're not true spikes, and this aids with traction on things like hard packed ground where you're not actually getting penetration into the ground so much, as well as things like wood. I use this mainly when it's raining or snowing or anything like that, so these are rainproof for the most part. I mean, this tongue isn't rainproof, but for the most part the sole is rainproof enough, and these work quite well in snow as well. Because of the clearance, they end up providing quite a decent amount of warmth for your feet in those days when you're having to walk on a lot of cold ground. I got these from Ross for Less in Las Vegas for like $10. I figured if I even wore these to like 1 or 2 matches and saved wear on these, they'd pay for themselves pretty quickly at $10. So those are my shooting shoes and how I arrived at getting them. I hope I've given you not just a couple of recommendations, but perhaps things to think about when getting your shoes. And although improvised for purpose, you'll find the right ones for you. Let me know in the comments what shoes you use for shooting and why, or what gear you'd like me to cover next. Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe.